we're back again with Patrick Strudwick, the multi-award-winning journalist. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And in this section, Patrick, we're going to be looking at who inspires you. So, who for you is your inspiration?
Really, it's my best friend. I'm sorry to say it's not a celebrity that anyone can constantly think about. Although I do have... I mean, in terms of NLP, I would say that Madonna is absolutely the walking and dancing embodiment of good NLP, or indeed LP. But I don't know her personally. I do look at her sometimes and think, crikey, that's adaptation, that's determination, and she listens to feedback, and she keeps on going, and she refuses to accept her boundaries of age, boundaries of talent. She really is the embodiment of it. For me, though, I am as interested in being humane and compassionate as I am as being success. And so for me, the person that inspires me constantly is my best friend, who had a very, very difficult upbringing. Poverty, abuse, violence, was, born into a very problematic family, and knew that he had to escape, knew that he had to get away, worked hard, got an education, even moved thousands of miles away, and didn't just become a success. He's a therapist, in fact, but became the most caring, compassionate person I've ever known. And I think there's a very useful lesson there. I think when people think about success, it can be a very blinkered, selfish version of that, which can be harsh on others, and it can be harsh on yourself. That's not the version of success that I'm interested in. The version of success that I'm interested in is my friend's version, which is tenderness in the right situations, but encouragement. We mentioned earlier about my determination. What's fueling that and what's going on behind the scenes in my head is me constantly encouraging myself, saying nice things about myself, telling me to go for it, telling me to do it, telling me to try it, telling me to take a risk, go for it anyway, see what this does, see what that does, which is all a kind of encouragement. It's not a berating, dominant father shouting at his father to be the best. It's me saying, try this, try that, do that, take a risk, which has a lot more kind of compassion underpinning it. And I, would like to think that I use that in my interactions with other people, which for me makes for more well-rounded success. And that tenderness, that care, I learnt from my best friend, and when I am lacking motivation, which of course happens, as it does with everyone, particularly if I'm really lacking in motivation, the way that I talk to myself and what I say to myself is what he would say to me, which is, gently kind of, come on, it's going to be okay, you can do this, that kind of a thing. Not, get out of bed, do this, be the best. It's not a sort of shouting sergeant major games teacher.
And obviously, because you've done the lightning process, and as you may know, the lightning process is now coming out in book form so people can use it for happiness and fulfillment. It discusses this thing called the coaching position, which is where we develop a relationship with ourselves, where we become our own coach. And the coaching qualities are all about compassion, empathy, encouragement and support, and developing that so we have that with us all the time. I was on a course yesterday with this lady, Sharon Salzberg, who's an expert in Buddhist meditation, particularly loving kindness, the Buddhist approach to changing the world, changing our lives through being kind. And she said the first thing to do is to start by being kind to yourself. And that, it seems to be a theme so much of work about compassion. Start here, be nice to yourself so you can take it further in the world.
Absolutely, and I think that, I suppose I envision it as an excellent parent figure within myself. Because sometimes we do feel like children, in a good way or a more problematic way. And when I parent myself, which is this internal coach, sometimes I will just let myself get away with being naughty, which might be, sitting on the couch all night and stuffing my face. Because, we have to allow ourselves to be human and to sometimes be a bit rubbish and to not be successful or useful, but to just indulge ourselves.
Well, it comes back to that thing about definition of success, whether we have this kind of narrow and slightly poor definition of it being about money, or if we look at it in a larger sense of it being about fulfillment, happiness, and making a difference to the world, fundamentally living a life that you love, a much more powerful place to come from.
Indeed, and I think what a good internal parent coach can do should be really to give you a good balance between kind of cracking the whip sometimes, and sometimes I do have to crack the whip on my own back and say, just come on, just do it. If it's something you really don't want to do, something that's really boring or kind of you're dreading, I will also, by the way, if I'm in that place, if I'm in that position where I'm really having to crack the whip, I will absolutely challenge my perception of why I think it's going to be boring or difficult, or and try and or even not try, succeed in showing myself a different version of that. Envisaging the gym being enjoyable, and feeling better, and imagining the outcome once you've finished it. Those things. So even when I'm cracking the whip, there's a positivity there. But yeah, I think it's about balance, and that parent sometimes being tender, sometimes being a total slummy mummy and saying, do whatever you like. And sometimes, being strict.
Yeah, I think having that flexibility is so important. And that brings me to a question I was toying with asking you, which I'm going to ask, which is all about revolution. There's been a number of revolutions. We've had the Industrial Revolution, French-American revolutions. Then we've got economic revolutions where we try capitalism or communism, depending where we are in the world. But nothing really seems to bring the true results of massive world change, more happiness, more fulfillment, really deep fulfillment. So if you were in charge, what would be the revolution, the biggest change you would like to see in the world?
To the world?
Yeah, what do you think?
Crikey.
Because we've done money, haven't we? We've tried sharing it or having it all to ourselves. We've done...
Well,
what's the one for you?
I suppose if there was one thing that I wanted for the world and from the world, is empathy. It's in horribly short supply. I think if you were from another planet and you looked at a world where there was an absolutely horrifying distribution of wealth, where there was a world that absolutely produced enough and gave it to a tiny minority of people and let most people suffer, you would say what they need is a vast injection of empathy. That, for me, would be the single most transformative thing that the world could see. How you do that, I don't know. It's because empathy can be a bit like wealth and success, which is the more you have, the easier it is to have more. If someone shows you empathy, it creates empathy within you, unless you're an absolute sociopath. But for most people, if they're shown empathy, they will show it back, either to that person or to other people, to themselves, to everyone. And the more you get, the more you give. That spiral, either up or down, is where humanity is on. And I wish that would be our focus.
I'm going to come back to that because I think that's really, really interesting. But before I do, I'd just like to go to the other side, the dark side. Now, doing what you do, you're a campaigning journalist. You say things you feel are important to say. And as a result, you get a certain amount of people stirred up, and some of them want to attack. And I know that you get a number of quite difficult situations to deal with, abusive comments on social networks and stuff. So I was wondering if you could just share with our listeners how you deal with that, because if you're actually making a stand or want to do something in the world doesn't always support it in the way you feel it should. So how do you deal with that kind of thing?
Yeah, I get a lot of abuse in different ways. Most of it is not face to face. Most of it is, on social media, via email or letters. And I suppose I deal with it in the same way that I deal with myself when I'm parenting or coaching myself, which is, sometimes I'll allow myself to have a base knee-jerk reaction, which is to get really angry or upset, and to just vocalize that, just let it out. Sometimes I will respond and try and belittle them. That's not a great trait. Just try and mock them. I'm not particularly proud of that. But when someone is saying to you that they think you should be burnt, it's quite challenging to give empathy back to them. Sometimes I'll try and reason with them. Sometimes I'll ignore it. I don't have any particular rule, except that, across all of that, what's happening is that I am, managing my human reaction to abuse. And I suppose I say to myself that it's okay, actually, however I respond to that, because I didn't ask for it, and it's pretty vile and can be in torrents. And what's most important is that it doesn't inhibit me. It doesn't stop me doing what I want to do. Ultimately, I don't remember the vast majority of the individual things. I will glance at it and glance away. It will be a momentary thing normally. It's very rare that I allow one particular piece of abuse to actually get to me, to get under my skin. It's never people that know me. I remind myself of why I do what I do and keep my eye on the goal, which is to tell people's story, to uncover hidden truths, which is the essence of journalism, and to say what I think, because everyone's got a right to say what they think. And these people that are sending me abuse have a right to say what they think. So there isn't really a simple answer, but it's a management system effectively that I will adopt in order to continue what I believe in doing.